way I think about execution is there are levels at which you can execute. There is a basic level at which I would expect every product manager to be able to execute. Then what does really good execution look like? So that's the next level after basic. And then the last one is, what is great execution? Over time, I think every product manager, regardless of their core strengths, needs to work towards getting to great execution. And it's certainly a prerequisite for most competitive product leadership role to be really great at execution. The last thing I'll say before I move to the framework itself is it is always a good idea for you as a product manager to focus on getting better at execution. Maybe your strength is not execution, maybe it's something else. But execution is just such a core job of the PM that you will always benefit your team, your product, your customers, and your own career if you focus on getting much better at execution. And frankly, it is also the easiest of the skills to acquire. There are certain product skills that are high leverage and that will differentiate you a lot that are much harder to acquire than execution is. Now, this is not to say execution is easy to get good at. It is not. The point is, it is among the easiest skills of all the skills that you could think about as a product leader, particularly. So the framework is simple. At the basic level, if you want to get good at execution, you need project management, process orientation, and communication. So those are the basics of execution and of this execution framework. How do you get good at these things? It's practice. And I think a lot of people just get good at these things through just on-the-job experience. I think the most important one of these three, although each is quite important, is structured communication. If you want to, again, establish the basics, you need to be able to express what is going on in a very structured way. You need to be able to express what needs to happen in a very structured way as well. So in that sense, that is very, very vital for you to think about and focus on. How do you get good at structured communication? Again, this is where this is one of the easier skills to acquire point comes in, which is you can get quite good at structured communication just by observing what other people do. There are some people who either were naturally good at structured communication or they made themselves really good at it. Just watch what they do, and I bet you will learn a lot about structured communication. Last note about communication before moving to the next level, which is the very good execution level, is that you will need to get good at structured communication in all forms of communication. So verbal for sure, but also written, and public speaking, which is a little separate from verbal, which may happen in meetings and whatnot. You'll just have to get good at all of those. And also reading and listening is another key part of it. Here's an important point. And this relates to the antithesis principle, which is you should try your best to get good at structured communication, but you should make yourself to be a person that can extract structure even from unstructured communication. So make yourself really good at structured communication, but don't expect that everybody else you work with is going to be great at structured communication. You need to turn yourself into the kind of person who can extract structure from what seems like fairly unstructured communication. Okay, so those are the basics. Then to get good at execution, very good at it, you need to develop problem-solving skills, contextual expertise, and goal-setting skills. Among these three, the one I'll spend a little bit of time on is contextual expertise, because it's not a very common term. And what I mean by contextual expertise is you need to become an expert in how things work in your organizational context. So how does this organization make decisions? What is the documented approach and what is the real approach they use? Sometimes there's differences between what is documented and what is the real approach. So you cannot get good at execution if you keep going to the documented approach and keep telling people, well, but this is what's documented. You need to understand what is actually being used in practice. So you can make changes and improvements to what's done in practice, but you need to understand that first. That's one example of what I mean by contextual expertise. Another example of contextual expertise is to understand people, the people you work with. How do they operate? What are their strengths? What resonates with them? What resonates with Alice versus what resonates with Bob? You really need to deeply understand that in order to be good at execution. Another thing you need to understand, again, it's all part of contextual expertise, is what is your company trying to do? Do you understand that broader context? Because it's really important to get to this very good level that you understand that, because then you'll be able to use that information to influence others. You'll be able to use that information to craft better plans. So that's what I mean by contextual expertise. It's highly, highly, highly important. One tangent I will go on is sometimes when companies have a lot of churn within their workforce, people are leaving and new people joining all the time, is that contextual expertise gets lost. You have new people coming in who are trying to figure out, oh, how does all of this work? And therefore, then execution suffers because not enough people have this contextual expertise. Okay, so that's the really good level. To get to the great level with regards to execution, the core things are creativity, foresight, and persuasion. Now, each of these, creativity, foresight, and persuasion, builds on top of the other skills. Let's take problem solving. You can solve problems in a very analytical and structured manner, and that's great. That will get you to really good execution, but it will not get you to great execution. To get to great execution, you need to practice creative execution. We run into problems all the time when building a product. We had conceived something, we had agreed on something, some roadblock came up. Oh, the operating system doesn't support this thing that we wanted to do. Or, oh, we got some input from a partner that we are not allowed to do this thing we thought we wanted to do. What should we do? These kinds of problems come up all the time during execution. It is important for us to not just look at the space of solutions that are logical and rational and obvious, but to also get quite creative. What is creative depends on the context, but creative execution is really important for you to be able to get great at it. And that's a consistent quality I've seen in many people. For those of you who have read my writing on high agency, you know that creative execution is a very core part of high agency as well. There are many traits for good execution and great execution, but the one trait that applies at all these levels is resilience. You absolutely need to be a resilient, disciplined person to get good at execution. You can apply that resilience at each of these levels. Once again, the framework is basics, really good and great. And then each of these has a certain set of component skills or traits that you need to focus on. What I wanted to share is how you personally can sort of think about augmenting your skills, developing your skills, and building traits that will make you really great at execution. Once you're really great at execution, the process, like do you follow agile this or agile that, it is immaterial. Now, it does matter in the sense that, oh, your team will probably work better with one process or the other. But the point is, once you get good at these component skills, you will be able to operate at your best, regardless of the detailed process used. There are a lot of steps between a plan, OKRs, a kickoff of a project, and actual success. Execution is merely or nothing but a translation of those steps into action that's cohesive, that's intentional. It's really important to remember sometimes when people talk about execution, they talk about, oh, what's the process? Who are the stakeholders? And are we all aligned? And where's the matrix? All of that is good stuff. And it's vital for good execution. But to get to great execution, you have to remember that there is a lot more than just organization. You have to be thoughtful at each step of the way. You have to apply craftsmanship and you have to apply rigorous thinking to really make something that is great and has a profound impact.